Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for the Wrestling Inc. AEW Dynamite After Show, and have we got a show for you. We've got casino gauntlet matches. We've got the world champion back in action, and we have the return of young Jack Perry. But before we get started, allow me to introduce the crew. I'm Jack Farmer, being joined by George Hermoza and Jimmy Korderas. I'm going to need a little explanation here.
No, I got my yellow flag ready to throw when needed.
We got the yellow. You can take the ref out of the refereeing, but you can't take the refereeing out of the ref. I don't know how to say it, but you get what I'm trying.
I'm taking that. I'm stealing it.
I feel that I use the word ref a few too many times, but
cool.
We're going to have a fun chat today. We're going to have a good conversation, I think, Jimmy. George, you're reading today. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with you these days.
Overall, actually, it's funny. I just noticed that the cover says June 92, but I don't know. Maybe somebody gave it to me, but inside it's like a completely different like month. It's like from like June, like it's just weird. This definitely isn't covering WrestleMania 8. It's something else inside. It's really weird. Anyways, I got a few things going on. Go ahead and subscribe to the Wrestling Chatter. We got interviews with Scotty Riggs that just got posted up, and some other fun stuff that's coming up. I don't like to not that I'm like secretive. I just don't like to mention who's coming up next without the interview actually happening, in case there's a postponement or something happens. So but so far some cool things coming up on the Wrestling Chatter YouTube channel.
Nice.
What a tease you are. Jeez. Speaking of tease, I do want to say Majestic Marie here in the chat. I want to give a shout out to Majestic Marie. I actually had the chance to chat with Majestic Marie on her show Peaches and Power Bombs, which will be available next week. We talked about all sorts of fun stuff, including Wrestling Inc. So make sure to check that out. Follow at Queen of Mods on Twitter, and you'll be able to get all the details there. Let's talk about some news. Of course, everyone like, comment, share, subscribe, 5-star review, all the fun stuff. We got some news here. It's WWE heavy for the news, but don't worry, we'll get into the AEW stuff in just a little bit. First news is bad news. First news is about
you gotta say it better than that. I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
Listen,
I like the accent. I like it.
That's gimmick infringement. I say it the American way.
Trademark.
Hey, y'all, we got bad news. Fightful Select reports that Jimmy Uso is not going to be included on either night of the draft due to dealing with an injury. While the nature of the injury and the timetable for Uso's return remains unknown, it appears he will miss enough time that WWE has decided to keep him as a, quote, free agent for now. Jimmy, there's never a good time to get an injury, but at least, I guess if I'm trying to find a positive, it's after WrestleMania that this is happening, and it's while things are kind of in flux instead of in the middle of something big.
Yeah, in the middle of bad news, and this is bad news, you try to find something positive to come out of it. That's one of the positives. The other one for me is he's not eligible for the draft, so that means he does stay on SmackDown, where the Bloodline storyline seems to be staying. So at least he looks like in the future he will be still involved in that. And that's the important thing. It's looking into the future. Of course, first and foremost, you want him to be healthy in the long run. But maybe, I hate to put it this way, it sounds really weird, but it may be a blessing in disguise, because somebody might want to say, well, let's draft him over there so they don't see what's coming next with this Bloodline storyline thing, keep him, in the shadows, so to speak. But I hope he's okay, and that's the bottom line. And it makes perfect sense the way they wrote him off. They did it in a great way. So that tells me maybe the injury is something that's not serious, but something that is enough to keep him on the shelf for a little while.
Right. And it's, I think that this, in a way, again, never a good time, but it is a chance for him to disappear for a little bit, sort of freshen up so we can miss him a little bit when he comes back, George. Of course, thoughts going out to Jimmy Uso. Hopefully it's not too long that he's on the shelf.
Is anybody actually surprised that he's actually injured, considering the attack that he got from Solo and Tama just a couple weeks ago? Like, of course he's going to get hurt. You see the brutal attack that was landing on him by them. So Who knows how long he'll be out for? But yeah, I honestly think it's going to play out perfectly fine. I think even if he wasn't legitimately hurt, he'd probably still be off TV for a little bit just so they can play off. So, like you said, maybe there is a silver lining in that in terms of maybe this is just according to plan. Maybe they're just kind of reporting and letting us know that he is unfortunately hurt. But again, I personally think he would have been gone for a few weeks anyways. And who knows, maybe it kind of works out with however they had the story to begin with. So as far as not being in the draft goes, I think it's smart. And I don't think I saw Rhea Ripley in that graphic as well, which is kind of interesting. I know they had Damian Priest is staying on Raw, but that might create a little dynamic if Finn and Dominic and JD get drafted to SmackDown. But yeah, stay tuned because I'm sure we're going to see some pretty cool things with the Bloodline and especially with Jimmy Uso and his deal.
Well, we also, speaking of the draft, that's happening on Friday. And again, we'll get to the AEW Dynamite in just a moment. But as everyone settles in and finds their seats, the rules of the draft this time around have been released on April 26th. SmackDown, there will be 4 rounds with 16 total picks. On April 29th, Raw, there will be 6 rounds with 24 total picks. Apart from the women's tag team champions on each brand are protected and cannot be drafted. SmackDown will have the first pick on April 26th. Raw will have the first pick on the 29th. Rosters will lock and go into effect on May 6th. So it doesn't mention NXT, George, which they keep saying is going to be a third brand or treated in a different way. Thoughts on the draft, thoughts on the rules, and thoughts on NXT not being involved?
So sorry to correct you publicly, Jack, but if you look at the fine print on the graphics that they posted on WWE, it does say plus NXT superstars eligible.
They're eligible, but the NXT is not drafted.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I'm sorry to retort to you publicly.
Sorry. But yeah, I think that part's interesting. I mean, just looking at the picture right now, obviously with SmackDown going first, and there is no champions to be drafted. I mean, Roman's going to go number 1, but I'm just more curious if it's going to be Roman or the Bloodline like we've seen previously. I know last year it was Roman Solo and Paul Heyman drafted all together. So that kind of creates a whole dynamic as far as that goes. But not to be like a Debbie Downer, I'm not really a fan of this draft that they do. I think I'm kind of interested, or it's interesting that this is something that kind of Triple H has kind of inherited and kind of kept it going from the previous regime. I did like when it was maybe back in the day when it was 2004, 2005, how they did those drafts where it was just kind of maybe like someone randomly showing up on Raw and SmackDown, not having, coming to Monday Night Raw, Jey Uso. It's like he was on it last year or 6 months, but I mean overall, I mean it's good, fun programming, but I just wish there was something a little bit different about what we've seen before.
Yeah, something, Jimmy, that I feel like this is one of those deals where I'm always I just wish this was a more straightforward actual draft in this situation. I get why they do things a certain way, like I understand that there's reasoning behind it, but as someone who likes drafts, like the NFL draft is starting tomorrow here in the U.S. I say that, Jimmy, because you are in Canada, for anyone who may not know. But it's fun to do mock drafts and things, but like when there's only certain people eligible, some people count as a group, some people don't count as a group. Some champions can't be picked, others can. I don't know. It just makes it so convoluted and weird. I feel like I wish they would just say everyone's available, you get the first pick, bing 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 bing, and make it fun so that even like we could do mock drafts and things like that. There's also no real like what makes a good pick. Like why would I pick one person over another outside of the obvious number 1, 2, 3, or 4? I just feel like there's a lot of meat on the bone here that they could add to this to make it a little more interesting.
They absolutely can. There's lots of ways you can make it more interesting. Actually, I could refer to George on this one because he's the one who remembers dates very well. I just remember the draft that we did years ago where all the Raw guys were in the Raw locker room wearing Raw T-shirts, and the SmackDown guys were in a separate locker room, all assembled, waiting to see who was going the other way when they drafted Hunter, and he had to break up with Flair and those guys.
That was 2004.
There you go. See, that was fun. That's when you see the entire locker room going, "Oh no, why did they take him?" You know, that sort of stuff. You get that natural reaction. It felt a little more fun that way to see who goes and who doesn't. This way they're doing it. I'm really sad that NXT doesn't get to draft from the main roster, because I think that would have been a nice touch, especially for some guys who can use a little refresh. We talked about DIY, for example. Something is not resonating with them on the main roster. Maybe they could use a go back and refresh, maybe split them up, do something like that. Or, I mentioned a Ricochet or a Shinsuke. Why not those two guys can go back and just hone their craft? Ricochet, no problem. These guys got all the skills in the world in the ring, but I think he just needs to develop that personality, and bring that out more. And we're better to go than to NXT, where you got guys like Sean and Terry Taylor and Matt Bloom, and they can bring that out of him. So that's the one part, like you mentioned, Jack, that they can draft from NXT, but NXT can't draft the other way. And you're trying to elevate that brand. If you want to really elevate them, allow them to draft from the main roster.
I was on my NXT podcast that we did last night on Wrestling Inc. I threw out having Omos and MVP maybe come down to NXT. I don't know if it come down, but just go over to NXT. I think that would be such a huge, just a big hit, just having that presence of Omos and MVP. And I think he can truly be the face of NXT moving into the CW era.
Now, really quick, sorry, Jack, I don't mean to step on you here, but that's a good call, because there's guys that haven't been on TV for a while. That gives them some exposure. That gives them some time to develop more character. That gives them time for the audience to absorb them. Obviously, the audience watching NXT is not as large as the main roster, but it gives them reps, which you're not getting right now.
Yeah, and we got Eric Douglas in the chat saying, Jack, I'm confused why the champions aren't eligible when the belts aren't brand specific anymore. I believe they're trying to make them brand specific, but that's where it gets clunky with the women's tag team championship. They say that one goes to all the brands, but then it's just it's weird when you have that single exception in there, and maybe that's just me nitpicking, but to me, it's just a weird thing that you would do it that way.
I hope they change it up soon. I really hope they do. Just kind of going back again, I was a big fan of the 2005. Remember when the highlight reel came out, and Jericho's like, and the first pick of Raw, and then John Cena comes out, and it was such a big deal. Like, that was huge. Nobody expected Cena, the WWE champion to go from SmackDown to Raw. And, it was like a month-long thing. And the last SmackDown of the draft month was Batista going over to SmackDown. It just felt like such a big deal, not just, hey, everybody's going to get drafted. Like, I don't know. I think it's a little silly kind of making it a big deal that somebody's staying on Monday Night Raw. Like, oh, so-and-so's staying put. But, I get. I mean, it's still fun to watch, but,
Eric Douglas says NXT can draft too. Based on the rules, it does not look like NXT is drafting.
That was mentioned nowhere that I saw anyways.
I mean, I could be mistaken, but it doesn't seem. And I also feel like, and this will be, I guess, the last part of it before we get into the AEW review, is I always feel like I feel like you could build so many things out of the draft, like matches where people are trying to up their draft stock, or trades. I think that'd be a situation where I think it'd be cool if NXT was like, hey, I will trade you these 3 young up-and-coming stars for your 1 big star. Or I think you could do a lot of cool stuff like that would also give wrestlers value and matches value, because now they're trying to up their draft stock, or whatever the case is.
Or, what I would love to see, actually, now that you mentioned that, and we'll talk about Dynamite right now, is maybe Ava coming in and saying that, hey, let me give you these 2 people and let me get a draft pick.
Yeah.
Kind of like how we see it in the NFL. Like, hey, let me get a draft pick. You got the 3rd pick. Hey, let me trade you our former NXT champion, or let me trade you our former North American champion for your 3rd draft pick. And, kind of add some fun things like that.
It makes you feel more authentic. That's a nice little touch. I like that.
But let's go ahead. Let's get into the show. As always, I want to thank everyone who is with us. Thank you for the 5-star reviews, the likes, the comments, the shares, subscribes. Aaron Mick, I Am Error, Burner Accountant, Majestic Marie, Laura Rock, Peter P, Stephen Camp, Ethan Cruz, Jonathan Torres, Danny Cochran, Greg Jacobson, Daniel Barry, Tommy O, and Joe C representing the Lurkers, Carlos. And then I'm going to butcher your name. I'm so sorry. Abdifada, Abdali. I'm so sorry. I'm getting that wrong, but appreciate you being here. Killer of Demons, Raymond Velasquez, Brienne, Donde, Matt DeCat, Baxter, Billy Patton, Blue Chew. We got a lot of folks in here. Angie Schindel, Christopher Stewart, George Clark, Brad 2024, Christopher Muniz, Jonathan Thomas, Eric Douglas. I mean, I can't get to everyone, but I appreciate y'all. Manish and Beer Money. Thank you so much for coming through, Mike Martin. Still sorry about blaming the clicking on
It's all right. It's all right.
Let's talk about this show. Now, obviously, the big news is what happened at the end of the show. And I know that's what everyone's going to be talking about, and that's what everyone's going to be discussing. So we're saving it for the end of our show. We're not jumping into it. You're going to have to wait until the end. It's a teaser, but feel free to let us know what you think. Also, let us know what you think about each individual piece as we go. I'm going to start. Orange Cassidy and Trent come out. Well, Orange Cassidy's thrown out. Trent says that he has given Chuck until tonight to decide whether or not Chuck is Team Trent or Team Orange Cassidy. Trent calls Cassidy a narcissist, talks about how they did everything for him and he gave them nothing. Chuck sides with Cassidy and says that if he can't get cleared to fight in the ring, then he wants to fight in the parking lot. Jimmy, I think this is one of the best things Trent has done in AEW. I love where he's coming from, and I love it because he's kind of right. Orange Cassidy doesn't do anything. So I enjoyed this. I also enjoyed the spin of how we're going to get Chuck and Trent in a parking lot fight. That makes sense storyline-wise. Where did you land on this opening spot?
I like the opening spot. Let's put it this way. I like the spot. I like the way they executed it. I thought it made a lot of sense. It furthered the storyline. I thought, like you said, Trent Beretta came out looking like a real monster heel. His mic work was good. He wasn't pandering to the crowd at all. Eyes focused on Chuck Taylor the whole time, or Orange Cassidy, and made it about them. Yes, sometimes you want to look at the camera and try and get the audience at home engaged, but this wasn't a situation where you do that. This was a situation that focused on the people in the ring at that time, and they did that really well. And leading to Chuck Taylor did a good job of teasing that little, maybe he was going to side with Trent, but then taking him on and challenging him to that parking lot brawl. I like that. I just didn't like where this was placed, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, it was a heavy start to the show. A lot of stuff very fast. I think that's probably where you're coming from, but we'll continue on. George, I want and by the way, Ralph the Ace, I see your comment. I'm going to save that for when we get to the end, when we're discussing that whole bit. So I see it, and we definitely will get to it. I just want to make sure we get it in a good flow of the show. George, Orange Cassidy, I saw you nodding your head as I was talking. Again, what I love about this is the whole character of Orange Cassidy is he doesn't care. And you could imagine if you're Trent and you care, eventually you'd start to get upset.
I mean, he's right. It's kind of it's one of those things where, like, how do you side against Trent? Because he's right. They supported him practically his entire time as trying to go for the international championship. And it doesn't really seem like Orange had their back when it came to capturing the tag team championships, which we clearly saw as best friends never really held any gold. What I really want to know is, where does Sue fall under this? I'm curious what's Sue up to? What's her mindset regarding her son?
Oh my God. I would be so excited if during that fight, Sue comes out and helps Trent and turns on everybody. I would be like, this is the greatest thing ever.
I would pop, and I would agree with you, but I mean, I think we already kind of have maybe too many heel moms in AEW. So,
But really quickly, George, to your point, the great heels, and what we're seeing elsewhere as well, they take the truth and they spit it out in a way that sounds so boo-boo faced. They are speaking the truth, but it sounds so visceral at times, and that's what gets that heat. And people at home go, I get what he's saying, but what a.
Right.
Bad guy. I'm trying to refrain from using any salty language.
Right. Yeah, no, it's so I love where this is going. This is actually the most I've cared about Orange Cassidy in a while, and I'm an Orange Cassidy fan. But I did think he did kind of get into a cycle of just sort of Orange Cassidy having matches for a title. And now there's a little bit something personal, and this is one of those few times a character like Orange Cassidy to make work is tough for things to get really personal all the time. But this one, it is personal. It makes sense. It's not just like, I'm serious this time. Like you can imagine him being very serious about this. So this is one that I've got my eye on in the build to Double or Nothing. And again, I like that there's that Chuck Taylor match in the parking lot that is likely going to happen. I don't think they made it official because that's a little stopping ground for him. That storyline wise will make sense as well as we build to that. And I think you could, Jimmy, make Trent into quite the star in AEW. I think he can talk. I think he looks the part. Do you think that they might have something in Trent if this plays out properly? Obviously, big if, but
yeah, I hope somebody is paying attention and sees that the value that they have in a guy like Trent and could utilize that to the maximum potential because he is a guy that ticks a lot of boxes and they can run with him. And I like the fact that they're building up to the rivalry and the match with Orange Cassidy because, like a great heel, like I spoke about earlier, takes the truth and says it in a way that gets you angry. A great babyface fights up from adversity. Mm-hmm. And I want to see when Orange Cassidy does have that match with Trent Beretta, stay away from that putting the hands in the pocket stuff that got him over in the first place. Get away from it because now it's personal, like you said, and you don't do the gaga when it's personal.
Right.
Make it a fight.
No, absolutely. And Armando saying 18 minutes behind. Just saw the TK clip. Had to hear you guys' reaction. Don't worry, we haven't talked about it yet.
We'll get there.
Talk about it at the end of the show.
It's the main event, guys.
We will get there. Beer Money saying it's official for Rampage. I assuming referring to the parking lot fight. It's a little bit bummer. I feel like they could have gotten a little more time out of that before we got to that one. But we always say make Rampage must watch, and that sounds like something that might be must watchable. We get to Swerve Strickland versus Kyle Fletcher. A fun matchup with the story being Swerve's injuring his ankle and during the double stomp. You're pulling out the challenge flag already. I want your thoughts, and I'm going to let you add on to what Beer Money says, if this is how you so inclined to. Says, wanted Swerve to open the show, make a statement instead of getting more Orange Cassidy. Then Swerve gets a random match with no backstory. Already made your new champ feel like a mid-carder. Let's see why you threw the flag.
Well, I threw the flag because that's right. You should have opened the show. This is a big moment. You have a new champion, and he took a back seat to an angle, which was fine. The angle was not the problem. It was the placement of it. And you put him, like the person in the chat said, in a spot where he's having a match against someone with no backstory, it's a championship match for no reason, or what is it, the championship contenders match? So you have to beat the champion. Eliminator match. So you have to beat the champ to get a shot at the champ. Those never made sense to me, just like non-title matches, whichever company it was. It doesn't matter. It made no sense to me. But this is a guy that's supposed to take your company forward, and they got the right guy in Swerve Strickland. They've got a guy that they could really strap the rocket to, and you made him feel like an afterthought when this should have been the big celebration to open the show. Here we are. Everybody's talking about new era, new era. There was your chance to say, this is our new era, and I'm the guy.
Yeah.
Make it a big deal. It just felt like, okay, it was a regular match for Swerve, even after winning the World Heavyweight, AEW World Heavyweight Championship. It just, again, placement. You got to think about these things and what you're going to do with him. Putting him in the match was not the right call, in my opinion.
Yeah, George, that is something. So I should preface, I love the match. I love Kyle Fletcher. I thought it made both guys look great in this one. I enjoyed that. But I do agree, this was a huge moment. It was big on social media. It was big historically. There was a lot of stuff. I don't want to jump ahead. There was a championship celebration later on in the night, and so I don't think we should have done two. But it does feel like I kind of wanted more of this is a big moment. than just going right back to work. Am I right there? Is Jimmy right there? Or do you have anything else to say here?
I do have. I'm going to agree to disagree. And let me break it down for a second. So I think the issue isn't necessarily that he should have opened the show, because I'm going to talk about a specific example that happened 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. At No Way Out 2004. We all know it. One of the greatest moments in the history of pro wrestling. Eddie Guerrero defeating Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. Tears were shed. You know, I'm sure you were there, Jimmy Korderas.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably one of the greatest moments just in all of history. Eddie Guerrero winning the WWE Championship. On the next episode of SmackDown, you know what opened up SmackDown? Let me tell you what didn't open up. It did not open up with an Eddie Guerrero celebration. But my beef is, like, this is a big deal. This is a really, really big deal. Eddie Guerrero was like the second hour. That's when the big celebration happened, just for the record. So I didn't need Swerve to open up the show. I don't think that was, I get where people are coming from, but I didn't need him, but I needed something. I needed some kind of celebration, not just some throwaway match that nobody's going to remember in about a month or two. I needed something, and we did not see it tonight. So when we don't see this something happen, you're making it seem like your champion, your brand new champion that's never been a world champion ever before in any other company, isn't really that big of a deal. That you rather see him in a great match. Again, nobody's talking smack about the match, not a single person. But at least for me, and I'm not saying you have to be like the WWE. I'm not saying, the WWE would do it like this. But at the same time, the WWE does a lot of things right. And just because you don't want to be like them doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't try to at least adapt some things that they do. Willow's celebration could have easily been on Collision. It could have easily been next week. But I needed something. I didn't necessarily need just a throwaway match for a historic making brand new world champion.
I want to so look, I got to agree to disagree a few things here. First off, I get what you're trying to do with the comparison to Eddie Guerrero, but one thing does not equal the other. Also, I don't know if maybe they may not have been right 20 years ago. I can't remember, but one, I think there is something to having Swerve come out and have yet another good match and show that he is a champion, that is a fighting champion. I think that there's good there. I think Kyle Fletcher, in a lot of ways, got over without going over yet again. I think that he's done an amazing job there. I don't like what a lot of people are saying, talking about the celebration that the TBS championship had, and I'll talk about that when we get to that segment. I agree we should have done something. I don't think this makes Swerve look lesser than, though. I don't think this hurts him. I don't think it makes him look like a mid-carder. I don't think this makes him look bad. I don't think this makes it look like they don't care. I just think that they could have hit the ball a little harder. I think they bunted for a single when they could have hit it out of the park.
It doesn't hurt him, but how much more can it have benefited him? We could have seen this
benefited him more, but I don't think that he looks bad. He didn't strike out. Like the way it was presented, we're talking like he struck out. He didn't strike out. I just think he could have hit a grand slam if he had a bigger moment instead of getting on base.
I get that point, and like you said, there was nothing wrong with the match itself. It is about the two most important segments in a show: is how you start it and how you end it. And we know that. Those are the two most important. So if you're not going to put him at the end of the show, the guy who's your biggest champion, who's supposed to be your number one star and your number one priority, and you're not going to put him first, then have him last. He was neither.
This match could have happened.
Yeah.
I want to, and I apologize if I yell.
No.
Obviously, I'm not yelling
No,
at you guys.
no,
but this match could have happened any other week. It could have happened next week. It could have happened on Collision. It could happen any other time. But there's really only one time you can have this kind of championship celebration. You're not going to have a championship celebration a week and a half, 2 weeks after you win the championship.
I think one last thing. Sorry, Jack.
We do all agree, though, that he should. I agree. He should have opened the show. Mm-hmm. Like that's. I think that's a.
Well, I think it could have been at the 9 o'clock hour,
or at the 9 o'clock hour. I don't think this was a net negative. I think it was a net positive. I think that they left some meat on the bone. They left some food on the table. when they could have had us eaten a little bit more.
In my opinion, they left so much meat on the bone. I need a take home box because there was too much meat left on the bone. That's my opinion. Again, we talk about moments. Moments are important. Name me one moment that stood out in your mind. Yes, it was a great match, but give me a moment that stood out in your mind.
Well, I think he just looked like a fighting champion that looked great. I think this was a match that made him look like the kind of.
But give me that one moment that makes you go, wow, he's our champion.
I think the whole time he looked like a champion. I mean, again, I'm not saying that this wasn't Stone Cold cutting the 316 promo. I'm saying that I thought he looked like a great fighting champion. Again, I agree. Absolutely should have opened the show with some, but I think. And also, I think Kyle Fletcher raised his stock. I think that Kyle Fletcher showed that he's someone who can be a big-time player in the future. I think he's got time before that happens, but I think that this was a good thing for him. I will say this. Let me ask you this, Jimmy. Next week, we find out who Swerve is going to wrestle at Double or Nothing. And this is for the chat, too. I want to hear everyone else's thoughts. Who do you think it's going to be?
Oh, I mean, there's the obvious choice. Samoa Joe is getting the rematch or whatever the case may be. Swerve is a big babyface, and they have to come up with somebody who is a heel that people aren't, gravitating towards as the cool heel that they want to cheer, because that audience and the hardcore audience kind of likes everybody. It's very hard to get them to boo unless you're Don Callis, who gets even the locker room to boo him. So, you know what I mean? So, man, that's a tough one. Maybe you get someone like a returning Hangman. Yeah, because there's history there.
It's one of these things, George. I'd love your thoughts. They're in a tough spot where anyone, it feels like you don't want to have him get a layup opponent, right? But you also, like everyone, and I agree, Hangman's the first person I think of, Jimmy. But I also think, man, Hangman can't take another loss. Like he needs to start getting some dubs very soon. George, do you have an idea of who you could put in there that one can take a big time loss, but also doesn't look like they're going to get run over at the same time?
I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, I'm going to go with Hangman. Hangman's a made guy in AEW. Like a loss isn't going to hurt him. And this was my beef when I saw the graphic. Is I hope they don't announce a match that leads to a story. I need a story that leads to a match. And the story with Hangman is so good to the point where you have a returning Hangman, because I know he hasn't been around for a couple weeks, just going absolutely crazy that everything that he tried to do in that match at Revolution was now a failure because now Swerve's a champion. So now to kind of see him come back a little more unhinged. I think if he does come back with this little unhinged character, I don't think it's going to hurt him in any way to lose to a Swerve.
I think, it's tough because he's lost, like, what was it, 3 times now to Swerve?
He can win. He can win a few matches between now and then.
In the chat, we got Adam Cole, Bebe. Is Adam Cole good to wrestle?
I don't know. They kind of missed at the pay-per-view the shot of him getting out of the wheelchair and walking in. So I don't know how good he is to go, but at least he's up and mobile.
And as we know, walking is a bit different than competing.
Running the ropes.
Yeah. Beer Money says give him Christian. I'd love to see that one. I feel like Christian's the kind of guy that even though he's coming off a loss, will still give us something that makes us love it. Maria says Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks one I want to see. I want to see get some wins. I feel like he needs to get some wins.
But I'll agree with George on this one. I think Hangman is the guy because there is a backstory to this. He can come out and say, you know what, that should be my title. You are holding something that should belong to me and will belong to me again because I'm coming after what is rightfully mine. Something along those lines.
We also got Malachi Black in there, Samoa Joe. Edge. Well, Edge is already a champion, so we can't do that. Claudio. We got a few Christians.
Another guy who needs a few dubs first.
Yeah. Jay White also needs another big because he just had that match, and so against MJF. So I want to see Jay White get some dubs. Brody, I'd love to see Brody. Cool. A lot of folks there. It's just it's actually kind of a tricky situation they're in right now. I think anyways. But we move on and we get to a segment that they started this show fast. Like things were happening. Boom, 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 boom. Some people are guessing Kenny Omega, by the way. I don't
think he's ready. Not yet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good that he's good that he's going to be on the show next week. At least we get to see him, which means it's, I guess, a positive step in the right direction health wise for him. But you know, from what I understand from his diverticulitis, it's going to take some time.
Yeah. Jeff Jarrett is who Jacoby's predicting. Ain't it great? Thunder Rosa, she's bummed out she came up short, but she's going to keep on trucking until Deonna Purrazzo shows up and we get a shoving match between the two. George, this was a matchup not a matchup. This was a promo. Simple. I don't think this is one that has a moment that we're going to be talking about forever, but I do love that you've got two heavy hitters in the women's division having a matchup that is not title related. And I think that this is something that AEW has been struggling with, but slowly starting to get into.
Yeah, especially because this is something that constantly I criticize actually WWE a lot, that there's no real, there's not a lot of kind of non-title feuds that we see with the women. We've never really seen a one-on-one match at WrestleMania that wasn't for a championship. So I like that AEW is doing things like this that kind of show like, hey, it's not, yes, the title is the most important thing, but we also got the spirit of competition that is a big thing in AEW. So I kind of like that you have these two former number one contenders kind of battle it out, and it kind of makes you think like, well, you know, even though, you know, we'll get to Serena in a second, but that doesn't mean that Deonna and Thunder Rosa are less important just because they're not in the title picture.
Yeah. What I like about this too, Jimmy, is this is exactly what two alphas would kind of do in this situation. They both came up short. They're both frustrated. They're both mad at each other. They're not necessarily, you know, good guy, bad guy. It's just two people like, no, I'm the best. No, I'm the best. You're the reason I lost. You're the reason I lost. It's a great little like setup, I think, to have a great matchup that's not overthought.
No, exactly. It's a simple story that tells itself, and it's good. It works. It's still, you know, people say, well, that's too old school philosophy. No, it isn't. Everybody wants to be a winner. And nobody wants to lose. And that's a simple concept that people can grasp. But like you said, I thought there was a little bit too much convoluted at the end there, trying to stuff too many potatoes in the bag again. And that's the one thing. Let things marinate. Let things breathe. Let us absorb what is going on and enjoy the moment when they had that moment, because you tried to get too much in there afterwards.
Yeah. That leads us to the next segment. And this is one that, I mean, you've already used the potato line, Jimmy. I don't know what this next bit. But Mina Shirakawa with Mariah May versus Anna Jay. We get a little recap of what happened with Mina and Mariah. Earlier, commentary explains they were very close as tag team partners in Japan. Mina gets the win, and Mariah comes into the ring with the champagne to celebrate with Mina. Anna Jay, however, is not happy about it and chokes out Mariah until Toni Storm comes to make the save. Serena Deeb makes her entrance and doesn't hold up the title, but says next time she touches it, she will be the owner of it. So, lot of stuff here. George, one, I'm happy that there's a lot of female talent getting TV time and doing something in stories. I want your thoughts on Mariah May here. I think Mariah May is an incredible talent, but I feel like I understand what they're trying to set up here, but it's very confusing how Mariah May is one way around Toni Storm, a different way around Mina Shirakawa. Not a whole lot of explanation about why she's different around these two. How do you feel? Talk to me about Mariah May in this situation.
So we're all, everybody here is intelligent. I know everybody watching us, you know, everybody's pretty smart for the most part, but they can't just assume that we're all going to kind of get what's happening, because there is a lot going on. You know, where's Mariah May stand? Is she loyal to Toni Storm? Is she loyal to Mina Shirakawa? I don't know if they're playing the HLA angle in some ways, you know. Again, I don't know if that plays a part into it. There's just a lot of things that I feel like they need to clarify. I'm not big on like Stardom. I don't know the history like I do with other things. So I'd kind of like to know what's going on aside from like, oh, these were a team. They were a team in Stardom. but like there's just a lot. I mean, I liked what I saw. I like the presentation of Mina Shirakawa, so I'm not knocking any individual person. I wish the camera angle was a little bit better for her opening dance sequence, but that's just semantics. But I wish there was a little more clarity with Mariah May. Obviously, in the ring, she's never disappointed in the 10 matches she's had in AEW for the most part. But yeah, I'd like to have a little bit more explanation on where her loyalty stands in terms of where. Tony or Mina.
Yeah, Jimmy, we've watched enough wrestling that we get it. Like this really is Mariah is going to have to end up choosing between Tony and Mina Shirakawa. Like that's where it's going. I get it. I guess the reason why I'm frustrated is we always talk about what really makes you grow to like certain wrestlers. And I feel like it would be like having Mariah May act like she's torn and have those segments or promos or things where she doesn't know which way to go, where Mina's like, why are you acting weird? And Tony Storm is like, listen, if you want to be a star, you got to do things like show us that. Like, let us see all that. I mean, again, I get it, but I feel like you're showing me the last line of the story and letting me go, oh, I get it. It's like you're starting with to get to the other side. Oh, it's the chicken was crossing the road. I get it. You know what I mean?
So,
but let's see the journey a little bit, right?
No, exactly. And it didn't have to start off with a match. In this case, it didn't need a match to tell that story. You could have had a little backstage interview with Mariah or something like that. Anything where Renee is talking to her and she's explaining the backstory with them two in Stardom. Which, some people, the hardest of hardcores, are going to know, but the vast majority of your audience don't know. So they're going to, and I know the announcer's job is to help tell that story, that backstory, but in a soundbite, in a quick line, you don't get much of that backstory. You only get a quick blurb. So let us know about that backstory first before you get into this, specifics and the details of what you want to accomplish. Let's see some reactions from them, some facials, some emotion, as opposed to just putting them in the match out there and let's do it there.
It reminds me of, I would say, like inner conflict is almost more interesting than outer conflict when it comes to storytelling. And I think of going back to what I think was the best story AEW ever told was Adam Page, while he was going through his drinking situation and splitting up with the Bucks. And how does he feel about Kenny Omega? All that was his inner turmoil. And you're kind of serving up, speaking of meat on the bone here, that's the theme of the episode. You're serving up something for someone to have perfect inner turmoil. The person I used to be versus the person I'm becoming. And that is something we all understand. We've all been there. We've all had that, like, I can be better if I suck up to the boss, which would be Tony Storm in this case, or who am I really, my old friend? I feel like you have so much stuff you could get into there to really make Mariah May a character that we love, and they're just skipping to the end and saying, wow, when she's around this person, she's different. Anyways, we'll see how that plays out. It's like, no, there's stuff here. Let's get to it. Let's see her have those struggles and why she's acting differently and those things. So
I do think we're going to see a little bit more of that next week because we saw a lot of that kind of come together in the ring. So I have confidence that we'll see a little bit more follow-up next week.
I want to, before we move on from this was definitely where I think the potatoes started piling up, Jimmy. But in any case, I loved this. I love what Serena Deeb did here. I love that she came out, and I thought this was just a really cool idea, a really cool approach of, I'm just going to sit down and I'm not going to hold the title over my head because everyone does that. When I touch it, I'll be the champ. What did you think of Serena Deeb? I mean, let's take all the potatoes out of the bag. Let's just pretend Serena Deeb happened in a vacuum. What did you think of that?
I was fine with that part of it. I wish that they would have worked on the audio issues because you could barely hear what she was saying. Yeah. And that's important because you want your audience to know what she is exactly saying, every word verbatim. And I don't know about sending her out there with a microphone. Does that work? I don't know. Maybe it seems too much to have a microphone in her hand, but it wouldn't hurt the situation because then not only the audience at home who could barely hear it got at least some of it, the audience and the crowd there, them hearing it as well and reacting to it is what you want on TV. They couldn't hear it, so they couldn't react. And that's what you want because your audience tells the story, whether they're absorbing this or not. And it will help the audience at home say, oh, people are biting into this. Maybe I should be paying attention too.
Yeah, the George, the audio issues, and look, it was throughout the show, very frustrating. I want your thoughts on Serena Deeb here, but it's so frustrating. Technical issues seem to be an issue that AEW needs to figure out how to shake, because it happens kind of a lot. Considering, like, when you think of most shows, NFL never has, like, it's like such a rare in a blue moon. I hate comparing to WWE because then everyone gets up in arms, but rarely happens in WWE, rarely happens in a lot of other places. And not just the audio issues, but I'm also thinking back to like the Bleacher Report issues that they had. And they just got to figure out something technically so that this stuff doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I can say it's a work in progress, but it's literally like they're going on 5 years now. So I mean, what's the excuse now? I mean, with that said, I think the Serena Deeb is the most believable challenger that Toni Storm has had so far, or is going to have so far. I think she's so good. Obviously Thunder Rosa, Diana, like everybody else has brought on such amazing things, but Serena Deeb, especially with her character, kind of this masterful technician that we see in the ring, kind of like the anti-Toni Storm in some ways. I think these two, if they end up, wrestling at Double or Nothing, I think these two have the potential of sealing the show.
Really quick question for both of you guys. Did you notice the pop that Toni Storm got when she came out to make the save?
Mm-hmm.
They cheered.
Yes.
So
because she's great, because she's awesome.
No doubt about that. But someone who's supposed to be a heel getting a pop like that makes somebody go,
Well, it's interesting. Let me ask you this, because that's kind of what was happening with Roman Reigns in WWE for a while, and there's a few people it's happened over time. If you've got the pin, Jimmy, and you're booking Toni Storm, do you say, hey, they like her, don't change anything because it's working? Or do you say we need to shift and start booking her differently to match what the crowd is saying? Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense, but I would wait. Take your time. Let's see if if this is just an anomaly. Because sometimes, depending on the crowd you're in front of, you'll get cheered. Like next week in Winnipeg, probably Jericho's going to get cheered in his hometown because he is from there, regardless of how dastardly he might be or how condescending he might be. He's going to get cheered. It's his hometown. That's the way it is. So let's see where it goes. And then you can make minor tweaks to the character to fit the crowd reaction. If they're still going to cheer her, then you start thinking along the lines of Rhea Ripley. The crowd is cheering. They're buying her as a babyface. Let's go with it.
I don't think she should change a single thing. I love her presentation. I know a lot of people were kind of knocking her for what she said about Cody Rhodes, or indirectly about Cody Rhodes at the press conference. I was popping at what she said about Nikki Garcia, Nikki Bella. I'm not going to repeat the line here, but I thought that line, oh my God, I lost it when she said that. But yeah, I don't change Toni Storm.
She's I would compare her to very like Stephen Colbert when he was doing his the Colbert Report, where she's so good at improvising in a character. It's insane. She's so talented. But I like your point, Jimmy, about not. So this is where I would be bad as a booker. Is I'd be like, fans like her, super babyface. Where this might just be one crowd. I don't. You don't know. You got to see how this plays out.
Well, they've already got a booker like that, so they don't need to. Sorry, I know.
To be fair, they pumped the brakes. They were slow on Swerve. They didn't jump too fast on him.
Yeah, there's sometimes when they do it, but a lot of times everything seems so rushed that you don't have to rush it.
We have someone who wasn't rushed, and this was one of my favorite moments of the night. Willow Nightingale comes out, and she has a championship celebration. And she's now the face of TBS. Eventually Mercedes Moné comes out. Moné says she's challenging for the TBS title before we get some finger pointing over who attacked who. Then they sort of rehash their history with New Japan Pro Wrestling and the injury. And now we have a story of the match. Can Willow beat Mercedes when she is 100%? And we also get a misplaced slap in the face. George, Scott Langford said earlier today, the fact the TBS title, secondary women's title, got a celebration and not the world title, ? I want your thoughts on this segment, but also I want to retort Scott Langford here in that I think that Scott Langford said earlier today, the fact that the TBS title, secondary women's title, got a celebration and not the world title, ? I want your thoughts on this segment, but also I want to retort Scott Langford here in that I think that Scott Langford said earlier today, the fact that the TBS title, secondary women's title, got a celebration and not the world title, ? I want your thoughts on this segment, but also I want to retort Scott Langford here in that I think that the women's division is something that people have been clamoring for forever to get more time, more respect. This was an opportunity to do it. I think, and also Willow Nightingale is someone who I think is equally deserving of a championship celebration. I think this was good to give this to her. I want your thoughts on Scott Langford's comment, as well as just your thoughts on the segment in general.
Well, I mean, of course, they're going to have a celebration on TBS. They can't have it on Collision or Rampage because that's on TNT. Yeah. I mean, I go back to what I said earlier in terms of the celebration and giving it to somebody who's well deserved and maybe like a first time champion. Obviously, you can't have two celebrations. Who's the biggest star in the company, or at least who the biggest star is supposed to be? It should be your world champion. I mean, with that said, I'm not going to punish or criticize the Willow celebration just because I felt like Swerve should have had one. Like, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, this was bad because it should, like, that's not fair to Willow and all that. But for what it was, like, yeah, it was good. I liked it. I mean, I think the more interesting thing is kind of Statlander kind of being a little bit of an instigator. I feel like she knew what she was doing when she pulled Mercedes, and Mercedes ended up slapping Willow instead of Chris.
It's yeah, I mean, I think we've covered Swerve and his opening celebration. Maybe he should have had something pretty well enough. But Jimmy, I want your thoughts on how this played out. If you feel like you're ready for Monet versus Willow, the layers of the storytelling, and also, is it possible to not like Willow? I feel like she's one of the most lovable wrestlers in a very long time.
No, she is very likable. And coming into this, you know, everybody talks about Mercedes being the babyface. She comes off like the heel in this one. To me, very much so. And it looks like she's going to be the heel in this one because Willow is such a likable character, like you said. And if I could critique only her promo, not that she said anything wrong and not in her delivery, but when you're in some kind of situation where you're going face to face and you're jabbing back and forth verbally, I know she wanted to play to the audience at home, but you're talking to Mercedes Moné, who's over here to your right, but you're talking to the camera. Talk to her. Let people think that this is getting very personal and you're getting, you know, you're invading my space.
Yeah.
So, you know, that kind of thing. That was the only little critique I have about it. Otherwise, it was executed very well with the slap, the way it was presented and that sort of stuff. And it was intriguing. Those just little minor tweaks, as I like to talk about, tighten those screws, where, you know, I get it. When you first came out and you're alone and you're with Chris Statlander, you know, talk to the camera, talk to the audience. That's fine. But when Mercedes is in, your focus has to shift because now you're kind of like turning your back to her.
I love that you said it. I noticed it too. And the reason I noticed it is one of the first times I ever worked in a pro wrestling show, Primetime Live. I was doing an interview with Bad Dude Tito, and I didn't know where to look. You know, I didn't know, like, you know how wrestling is, Jimmy. You get thrown into the fire. George, you know as well. You wrestle. And so I didn't know what to do. So I'd ask him a question, and then I would look at the camera too. And then when I watched the tape back, I was like, it looks like we're a tag team or something. We're both looking at the camera together. Right. And it's one of those things you learn. It's just you learn in the moment. You look back and you go, I should have stayed looking at him because I'm asking him the question. I'm not looking at the people. I'm looking at him. And it's different, but I guess it's the same to what you're saying. It's why when the interviewer is interviewing people, they don't look at the camera because, I mean, every now and again you do, like, you know, one of these and you kind of like look at the camera. But like, if someone ever finds it so embarrassing, I'm just like, yeah. What'd you think?
Perfect example is John Moxley, like especially last week when he came out with that speech that he made. You know, he was walking around the ring, he had the microphone in his hand, he's talking to the audience live there, but every once in a while he'd stop and look at the camera. And he didn't do it often, but when he did do it, it felt like, oh boy, look at the intensity in this guy. Yeah,
there's times you're supposed to and times you're not supposed to. And so I guess I just try to relate. Like I totally messed it up one time too. We watched it back. I was like, what am I doing? But in the moment, you're just like, it felt right. But in the moment, when I look back, I was like, because you don't think you think, oh, there's a camera. You look at the camera, but then anyways.
Aren't we our own worst critics sometimes? When I watch, you know, I get people send me film. Hey, you remember this match? And I went, oh, I wish I didn't.
Oh, I always say sometimes, like, if you couldn't pay me enough to watch back some of the old stuff I've done. In any case, I think this is great. Oh, I guess the last thing is I wanted to say about Mercedes and Jimmy, I want your take on this because you mentioned that people, the fans' reaction, it felt like she was leaning more to the bad guy side of the tracks. But this felt like her best mic work since coming to AEW.
Yeah, I definitely was. It's still a work in progress, and it's almost like they're trying to feel it out whether she is going to be that full-blown 100% heel. She's almost like borderline right now, so they're kind of on the fence with it, but it is leaning towards heel side, and I think that's where you're going to see the best of her. Yes, she could be that babyface, but I think in a heel role, I think that's where she's going to really excel. And I still want to find out what the heck does CEO stand for.
Maybe that's it's like FTR. They're just never going to actually confirm what it means.
Or deny.
or deny. By the way, I like Beer Money here. Says Stokely would be good with Mercedes as her mouthpiece. You know, if he stabbed Willow in the back and joined Mercedes, that could be a very good, good team there between those two. I'm a big Stokely fan. I think he's very good at his role. We get something now. We're going to get to the Casino Gauntlet next, and it's a gauntlet match, but it's first fall to a finish with the winner challenging Roderick Strong. We had, I may miss someone here, but Jay White, Dante Martin, Penta, Kyle O'Reilly, Will Ospreay, Lance Archer, Commander, Jay Lethal. Eventually, Ospreay gets the win and will face Roderick Strong at Double or Nothing for the international title. Later, Don Callis is proud of Ospreay, but says you should have hit the Tiger Driver, and Ospreay says no, but Callis is like, boo, you should do it anyways. George, when they started talking about this match earlier in the show, I was like, this sounds dumb. What a dumb, gimmicky, silly matchup. But when it started and it started going, I thought it was super fun. I don't know if I want to see it every week, but I thought this was a fun match. And I think you're shaking your head the wrong way.
What are we doing? Like, how do you have a match where it's like kind of like Rumble rules, but technically it can end with two people?
Why not?
I mean, yeah. God, I just wish they would have explained it better. I don't think I think how many people was that? 9 or 10?
I didn't keep track there.
Let's just say there's 9. Let's just say there's 9. I think it wasn't until Tony Schiavone toward the end of the match said we got 21 people total waiting in the back, or that was total waiting in the back, ready to be involved in the match, when I kind of realized, okay, that's what the match is. It was a little confusing at the end, like, wait, do you just pin everybody? It was just a little confusing. I think it's one of those things where it sounded like a good idea, but when now the execution, maybe it still needs some polishing. I'm going to be optimistic. It still needs polishing.
A
countdown would have been nice.
I will. So I will confess something I've learned over the past years, maybe even very recently. I will always get excited about anything where someone's music randomly hits throughout the match. Like as I was thinking back to like the end of WrestleMania or this one or the Royal Rumble or even just whenever someone's music hits in the middle of the match, I'm like, oh, I get really excited. I'm like a child at a Jack in the Box. I just get excited when the thing happens. So Jimmy, I have a feeling you hated this matchup, but I want your thoughts anyways. But also I want your thoughts from a story standpoint about the talk of this move Ospreay does being legitimately dangerous, him legitimately saying he's going to stop doing it, and now working that into a story and kind of the division between him and Don Callis.
That's part of the story I do like. It does play into what happened on Sunday night at the pay-per-view. And I haven't been reading anything or seeing anything online that is the injury to Bryan Danielson.
I don't know how accurate that is.
Is it storyline? Is it an actual injury? It did look for someone who's had neck issues. That is a tough bump to take. That is a really tough bump to take. And if it was Angle and he wasn't really as injured as they played off at the pay-per-view, then bravo to them, because, the referee calling for the doctor to come in and stuff like that, and Ospreay hitting him, not realizing he was injured, was a good way to go. And because of that, felt terrible for injuring him like that, injuring one of the guys he idolized and took pride in beating at the pay-per-view and injuring him, saying, I'm not going to use this move ever again because I don't want to hurt people. I just want to win matches.
Yes.
It's not, and that kind of thing. So that makes him more of a baby face in the eyes of the audience. And that part of it I liked. As far as the entire match goes, it was a little convoluted. I didn't think of it until George mentioned it. A countdown would have been nice so that people could anticipate when the next person would enter the match.
Yeah.
And, you didn't need the announcement of who it was, or maybe you did because some people were going, okay, who's that? I don't know.
Right.
It kind of, I don't know, it ruins the moment and it ruins the response you're going to get from the crowd as opposed to having that announcement. But it served its purpose. It catered to that audience, not my cup of tea, but I'll like you said, George, maybe they could tweak a few things here and there and make it make sense where, guys enter at certain points of the match and the pinfall you limit it to 10 guys, let's say. And once all 10 have entered the match, then pinfalls and submissions count or something along those lines.
I kind of liked knowing that it could just keep going. And I was kind of curious how many other people are going to come in. And I think that unpredictability, I do feel like the countdown between people was totally just made up. I don't think anyone was keeping track of how long each person was in there before the next.
Somebody looked at their watch and said, "Oh, geez, you better go."
Yeah, it did not feel like that was those were even intervals. I don't think that's probably why they didn't have a countdown. It's just like, oh yeah, you got to go out there. I forgot.
I do think it kind of sets up maybe long term, maybe not anytime soon. Maybe like an Ospreay heel turn. Maybe he'll be in a match and he knows what he has to do to win the match, but it's just not happening. And then he hits the Storm. What's it? The Tiger Driver 91. That kind of like, oh my God, it's the move it's like hitting somebody with a power driver, right? Like when we all know it's banned. Like that's what you have to do in order to win the match. And I think it kind of is cool that kind of made this at least some move. Obviously, there's a lot of moves out there that kind of are a little, pillaged. But like at least there's at least one move out there that when it does get hit, it's going to mean a lot.
Right now, that sparked something again in my brain, George. I like when things makes the wheels turn. Like have him in a match with somebody that you want to make, and have Will Ospreay goes on this long winning streak. He hasn't lost a match yet. He has an opportunity to hit that Tiger Driver 91 or whatever he calls it, and he doesn't do it. He hesitates, and it costs him the match. Mm-hmm. And now it starts to play in his head. Should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And then when he finally hits it, you'll get that eruption from the crowd for him hitting it and him getting back to the Will Ospreay that he was.
I just hope it's not leading up to him getting a world title match at All In. We can talk about that maybe like a different week, but I'm really happy that at least for now he has a different prize on the mind.
I think we definitely need to pump the brakes on him getting a world title match at All In. I know it feels like it makes sense, but I think that wrestling fans set themselves up for disappointment by promising themselves things that no one ever promised them. I think that happened. This happened a few times in both companies, but
yes, there's a right time for everything.
So yeah, I'd say I mean, I get it. It makes sense on paper, but we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But I do love, I guess last thing about this, I do love that Will Ospreay looked like he was about to do it and then caught himself and stopped. I think that adds more to it than if they just said, "Oh, you didn't do that move today," Yeah. And I'm sure him hesitating will cost him at some point. But we got the learning tree, Chris Jericho. He says FTW stands for the world because that's who Jericho won the title for. He's happy to teach the next generation. He invokes the name Terry Funk. Big Bill comes out and says he wants to learn from Jericho. Jericho says he brought Big Bill into AEW, and Big Bill says he will show he deserves to be under the learning tree. Next week, Shibata challenges Jericho for the title. Jimmy, people say I love everything. I've been critical of Jericho. I am digging him leaning into the stuff that all of us complain about online about him. He says he helps people, but is he really helping people? I love that he's leaning into it and being like, I'm doing this for all of you. I like the direction this is going, and I like Big Bill on TV.
Well, you could take that side of it because a lot of talk online and from a lot of people is, it is. It's something that's a conversation piece amongst the hardcore fans. are the young talent taking advantage of the veterans in the locker room and picking their brain and learning from them. And some of the stuff as far as rumor goes, is they're not enough of them are. Let's put it that way. So of course, some are, but apparently some are not taking advantage of the tools available to them, which they should. And maybe this is something that Chris said, hey, you know what? Maybe I can turn this backstage innuendo into real life on TV. And if that's the case, then, let's see where this goes. I don't know if Big Bill was the right choice there. Yes, maybe Jericho was responsible for bringing him into the company, as he says, but that's a little bit, we don't know enough about that yet.
Right.
Again, there's something they need to let us know ahead of time. Let's hear the story first. I want to see where this goes. I want to see where it goes with Hook, because I want to hear more from Taz as well. I don't think we've heard enough about that from Taz in this situation. Obviously, he's limited with what he can do physically. So,
right.
Maybe Taz becomes Hook's coach, and we see some backstage stuff like we saw with Chad Gable and Sami Zayn, but Taz really putting his son through the ringer to get him ready for Jericho.
George, you don't look like you are enjoying this. I think this is a great way for Big Bill to get on TV, to be the enforcer for a Jericho who is obnoxious. I think when you give Jericho the ability to be obnoxious, that's when he's at his best. And this feels like it could get very obnoxious. And so, and again, everyone's doing Jack likes everything. For like 2 months, I was saying it's just not clicking for me with Jericho. I think this is the right direction. I'm excited about it.
I hate to sound like a broken record, because I always want to emphasize just how big of a Jericho. You see this? One of the best books I've ever read. Mm-hmm. I have all of Jericho's books because that's how much of a fan I am. And I still am a fan of Jericho. But it just feels like, I don't know if it's Jericho, I don't know if it's Tony Khan. Maybe they feel like they feel like Jericho has to have a match on every pay-per-view ever. I know he's missed like one or two. I feel like maybe Jericho has to have an in-ring segment on every Dynamite. Like, I just feel like it's okay to not have him out there every single time. This could have easily been like a 2-3 minute backstage segment instead of killing out, 10-12 minutes of just an in-ring anything. It just feels like, again, I like what they're doing. Like, I like to see what's next. I like, but let Big Bill stand on his own too. Does he have to have somebody by his side? He had somebody by his side in WWE. He had it, in AEW with Ricky Starks. Now he's going to have Jericho. Like, I kind of want to see how he can do just by himself. I do want to see how many branches grow on this tree, but at the same time, I don't want to see so much time dedicated to it when there's so many other things that they can put their focus on. Moral of the thing that I'm trying to say is, I just feel like somebody needs to kind of put the kibosh on having so much Jericho so often. It's okay. Take a pay-per-view off. AEW is not going anywhere. Just let it breathe. Give yourself a break.
I don't think that a lot of people are talking in the chat about this potentially being a new stable. Jimmy, I hope it's not a stable. I hope it's just these two. And I hope it's Jericho basically talking, and then whenever someone tries to say something, Big Bill shuts them up. And I get it. I'm trying to think. I can imagine really leaning into it, kind of the way I know we're not supposed to say his name on this podcast anymore, but like when CM Punk was the straight edge guy, and he was like, I'm better than you because I'm straight edge. I could see Jericho kind of having that, I'm better than you because I'm the learning tree, and kind of getting that same sort of, everything he's saying is positive, but he's saying it in such a jerky way that you hate him for it. You know what I mean?
No, I absolutely know what you mean, because it comes off that way, very much so. And having a sidekick like Big Bill, like, that looks like a real enforcer. That looks like a guy who says, hey, that's your consigliere. You know what I mean? So that in that situation, I think it works. Yeah.
And I think that Big Bill is going to know how to play that role very well, personally. So we'll see.
I want to, sorry, but with Big Bill, what I want to see is him stop doing more wrestling promo style, talking on the mic, and be him.
Yeah.
Just be you. Don't do the, well, let me tell you something, brother. It's kind of
right. Yeah. No, I get what you mean, especially because AEW, I think, leans that way a little bit more in general. But also, I think that his style fits that a little bit better.
I like Beer Money's idea.
I missed it. Damn.
The Jericho can be a cult. Beer Money says Jericho can be the cult leader type, and 2 or 3 followers could work well. Like I said, I just like it with the one guy. I kind of like the one guy. And
it depends who it is too.
Because I feel like too often they do stables, and there's too many stables, and I feel like it gets watered down. And we'll talk about that. My opinion on that in this next matchup: Jon Moxley versus Powerhouse Hobbs. Promo earlier in the night from Moxley. Hobbs puts up a great fight, but it ends with Jon Moxley choking out Powerhouse Hobbs. Takeshita is in the waiting. Jimmy, I guess first and foremost, Hobbs, did he get over without going over in this matchup?
To an extent, but not enough for me. Because again, you talked about needing W's you need some stuff in the win column. Hobbs is a guy who needs a couple right now. He's a guy, obviously, you talk about, like you said, get over without going over. He has done that already, but you can only do that so many times before people start going, okay, there's another one. Okay, good match, but you don't want that. You don't want that feeling. He's the guy who can go. So I understand why he was put in that position, because it gives Moxley a fairly credible win in his first TV title defense of a championship that, I hate to say it this way, placed where it was because they called it the main event, overshadowed your own championship. I get you have a working relationship with these guys, but then again,
to be fair, title was not on the line in Swerve's matchup.
Right, I get that, but still, it's perception that this one felt like it was more important because they played it off as the main event. Here's your new AEW World Heavyweight Champion, but our main event tonight is this.
Right.
I don't know. That didn't sit well with me.
So as far as this match goes up, George, I enjoyed it. I feel like Don Callis, for as good as he is as a manager, doesn't get enough credit for his commentary. As I was listening to this, he was clearly Don Callis, but he actually had a lot of stuff. I love how he was talking about, most people are scared of Moxley, but Hobbs isn't, and he's taking the fight to him. I thought he did a really good job of sort of comparing these two individuals. Moxley gets the win. After the match, of course, Takeshita's looking on. This is kind of what I was talking about with the stables thing. I feel like in a lot of ways with the Don Callis family, it's the opposite of what you want with a stable. I feel like the sum of the parts is less than, because they're just kind of the guys that are together instead of their own guys. You know what I mean? Am I wrong on that? Do you like that? I feel like Takeshita's so talented, but I don't feel like the Don Callis family helps him.
I mean, it helped him become a heel, because it wasn't until he got paired up with Callis that he kind of became a bigger heel, because he was kind of beloved for a little bit. But just kind of going on what you said about Callis on commentary, even the littlest things that take like 5 or 10 seconds to explain, that's all I want. Callis saying that, hey, I got a lot of favors in New Japan, so I was able to get a Will Hobbs this IWGP World Championship title match. That's all I want. Right. Yep. I wish I would have explained that maybe earlier in the night. I wish I would explained that last week on why just Hobbs is randomly getting a title shot on Dynamite. That's all I wanted. So I think Callis is really good at that fact. Yeah, I mean, I think with Callis's people, I think it's just kind of a collection of guys. They don't really have too much in common, with the exception of Don Callis being at the helm. I mean, it does kind of create this element of Ospreay. I was like, is he with them? Is he not with them? Maybe a little more clarity, maybe a little more teamwork. Maybe they need a t-shirt. Do they have a t-shirt?
No, I don't think so.
Are they not doing a t-shirt because that's how much of a heel Callis is? Or just wear something. Just wear the same colors.
Jimmy, I'm going to give you the pen again. That's because I'm going to pass the buck here. I'm passing the buck. Secular Belt says, Jack, you have the pencil. Book Takeshita. Jimmy, let's say Takeshita's facing Moxley at Double or Nothing for the New Japan Championship. What do you do to make me interested in that?
See, that's a tough one. I wish I didn't have the pencil for that one, because that's a tough call. What do you do? I like the little thing that he does with the phone and getting the G translator there going and all that sort of stuff. It's a nice little touch. It's almost similar to what they did with Shinsuke with the subtitles, but in a different manner. And I think that's kind of fun. And I enjoy that. But to try and get me invested in a match between those two, something drastic needs to happen. And I know we've seen it in the past with Moxley a lot where, you get the color, you get the blood. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see something like that. I want to see something more visceral. We did the interview with Renee, and it's no secret that Renee and Moxley are in a relationship together. Maybe he says something on the phone, puts it to Renee's ear, and she just hauls off and slaps him. Mm-hmm. Like, how dare you say something like that? And that, Mox is in the ring, and he just charges to the back looking for him, wanting to take him out. Something along those lines. I'm trying to think outside the box here because I want to see something different than what we normally see.
We're getting a little long here, and I definitely want to talk about the way this show ended. But George, I have a question for you that is something that just boggled my mind while I was watching today. Why does Jon Moxley always enter first? It seems like no matter what the situation is, he's always first, whether it's the start of the show, whether he's the champion, main event, he is always first. Why is that?
Dealer's choice. When you're the champion, you make that decision whether you want to come out first or second. But I mean, as far as like the production standpoint of it, I don't know. I mean, that's a good something I never really noticed until you tweeted it earlier today that, because he can. I guess it's a simple reason. Yeah. Because he's Moxley.
By the way, Scott, my mistake. Yes, I meant Takeshita, not. No, Shibata, not Takeshita. Sorry.
Shibata, yeah. I mean, the question kind of works both ways because it's two talented wrestlers that you got to build interest for. They
quickly. Need to bring up that Takeshi's got all these victories over former world champions.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Rocky says, "First to come, first to leave." But Jimmy, in your time working in wrestling, have you seen anyone or had heard of any reason why someone would always want to come out first versus second? I feel like if I was the champion. Or if I had my call, I'd want to come out second because I feel like you feel like the bigger star when you come out second.
That's normally the way it works, especially if you're champion. It's a weird call to make, especially because the guy who comes out first gets the pop, but the anticipation, if they know who their opponent is, like, it's Stone Cold never came out first. He was always second.
Right. Yeah. That seems normal to me.
Right. So the guy that's going to get the bigger pop, your bigger baby face, should come out second, in my opinion. I don't know why they chose to do it this way. Maybe it's just experimenting with different things, or maybe they just want Moxley to be the first thing they see going into the match.
It's because it's been for a while now. I used to always think because he used to open the show, it's like, oh, they just want the first, that made sense because they just want the first big song. But Brandy says he has the longest entrance. Maybe. He just wants to get that out of the way. Of course, the Undertaker never came out first.
No. It's going to be a long entrance either way, first or second. It's a long way to the ring.
So curious. I'm just curious. I don't think it really matters, but usually the champ comes out second. So, okay, let's get into it. Fine. Well, we start the show. Mm-hmm. We got to start with the beginning. The Elite shows up in style with Jack Perry. Security tries to stop Perry, but the Bucks allow him through. They make their way to Tony Khan's office, and Alex Marvez tries to get the scoop on if Jack is back, and he will meet Tony Khan tonight in the middle of the ring. Crowd responds well to Perry. He gets Tony Khan to shake his hand, and then he punches him right in the kidney. I guess. I don't know. Punches him somewhere. The Bucks then come out and they hit him with a Meltzer driver. They leave as Tony Khan is laid out, and everyone, including TK's dad, comes to the ring. I'm going to start before I say anything. George, I want your thoughts.
It appears that people really loved it or they really hated it. I'm going to be that guy and say that I didn't love it, but I liked it a lot. The only thing that I think was a little off, and I kind of want to go on the person that sent the super chat, is like there was a little something that felt a little off, whether it's the execution. And again, I don't want to knock anyone specifically, and so I'm just going to bring up an example. Sometimes you'll have a script, and a script can be the best script you've ever read in your entire life for a movie, one of the best movies, but maybe you don't really picked the right actor to play the role.
Mhm.
And not that the actor's bad, it's just that maybe they need more experience. Maybe you're expecting a Tom Hanks, but you get like a Channing Tatum, who I love, by the way. Channing Tatum is so amazing. The Vow is one of my guilty pleasures, if nobody's ever seen it. The Vow. So again, but you know, I liked what I saw, and I really liked it. There was something just a little off as far as the execution, as far as the facial reactions, the tone. This is what, if it was done with all that, it would have been on a WWE level of cinema, they like to call it. When Tony's dad came out at the end, I absolutely loved it. I think it added a realism. Freaking the NFL has an article on the NFL.com website about it, which to me, I think that's a big deal. I just wish, and not just the people involved, but I feel like the production aspect could have been a little bit more theatrical or dramatic, especially when Tony's dad came out. But overall, I mean, I'll give it a big thumbs up. I just wish I could give it an even bigger thumbs up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, Jimmy, I have my thoughts. I know you have yours. I do want to read the super chat from Ralph the Ace, who is absolutely the ace, because literally waited the entire show to get the super chat in.
Thanks for waiting. Yeah.
Hey guys, maybe I'm alone based on social reaction, but something felt off about that Khan angle. Dad coming out was good, but something missing, in my opinion.
Yep.
Jimmy Korderas, moment of truth. What did you think?
It was off. There was something off, and Ralph, it was emotion. I didn't see really any emotion in Tony Khan's face. When you have somebody who's the owner, who's the boss, he has to react accordingly, and I don't think he did. He was still playing, again, I've never met the man personally, but he came off as kind of mild-mannered and didn't look like the authority figure that he should be. That's how it felt to me, anyways. If you're the boss, I know the other name we can't mention from the old regime and the other guys, you know, when he came out, you knew that he was the boss. You felt it not the current one.
Oh, that guy.
That guy.
Yeah.
That guy. Yeah. You knew he was the guy in charge, and whatever you did to him, there was always consequences. This didn't feel the same way. Yes, it was an interesting angle, but it lacked emotion for me because I wasn't getting emotion from Tony. His face was kind of like he was a little too deadpan, if that makes sense.
But were you getting that emotion from Jack Perry? How do you think he played his role?
He was okay in his role. He wasn't taking in the reaction from the crowd like I think he should have. He could have absorbed a lot of energy from that. Play it off. I guess beating up the authority figure and the boss is making him the heel by default, and playing in with the Bucks there and that sort of stuff. But I thought a lot of the moment was lost at the beginning of the show by having them arrive all together. That was completely lost. Leave it till the end of the show so you can make it a surprise. You know, after the Moxley match, we don't know he's there. You know, I get the idea of showing the Bucks showing up with Okada because they're the EVPs and all that sort of stuff. And maybe you could show that. Let them come in like normal and whisper in the security's ear, blah, 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 blah. You don't know what it is they said. They walk right in, security disperses. Something along those lines. And then after the Moxley match, all of a sudden, Jack Perry's out there. No music, no nothing. He walks to the ring, takes the microphone, and then he cuts his promo and calls out Tony Khan. Something to make it a surprise as opposed to giving it away at the beginning that he's here. Oh, no. I know what they were trying to say. Oh, something's going to happen tonight because he's here. But still, you lose that surprise element. It's like losing the pop that he could have got. There was a moment lost there, in my opinion.
I want to start by mentioning Antonio Murray talking about the other guy's first stunner. Look, let's be honest, those stunners never got any better. I fought for him, but let's be honest, the first one it never got any better than the first one did.
It's true.
But I also want to say that this thing from the very beginning to the very end, I loved every second of it. I thought they knocked it out of the park. I thought it was exactly what you wanted. I think Jack Perry coming in early and being presented as the guy that isn't allowed to be there, security trying to stop him. The only reason he can get through is because he's got some friends who can get him in. I think teasing us that later tonight, Jack Perry in the ring with Tony Khan. So, like, you can't go anywhere. I mean, you have to see this. This is what we've been saying since this whole thing started. I want to see them both in the middle of the ring. I thought that was great. I thought that the playing to the fans and making us like him at first before hitting Tony Khan was great. I think the fact that the Bucks hit the Meltzer driver on him, I think that was great. His dad coming out was great. Was Tony Khan the greatest actor in the world? No. But I think that's why he's never on TV. I think that's why he stays off TV. But you need him here. You needed him for this. And so it actually makes me appreciate that he doesn't try to be the authority figure or try to do this stuff more. I think the fans were into Jack Perry. I think him coming out to no music made him feel like more of a renegade. I feel like personally that they have somehow played this perfectly, and Jack Perry could be a massive star when all this is said and done. I think certain people feel one way or the other about him at this point, and they're not going to change. But I think that the volume of their reaction is going to go up, and I think the people who support him are going to double down on him. I think this was perfect. How do you not want to tune in and see what happens next?
Well, let's hope that's what happens. Let's try to turn a negative into a positive. And if that's what happens, then great on them. I hope they do. And I hope that does happen. I'm just not convinced it will, because the reaction he got was somewhat mixed and a little more tepid than I expected. I thought there was going to be a lot more reaction. I'm glad he didn't wear that Crimea River jacket, because that would have got people chanting the other guy. And you don't want that on your television. And I know, that's where this all originated. Exactly. Well, you don't want that.
I got to talk about this because I see people mention this too. In kayfabe, I still don't know what that means. Could someone enlighten me? But it says
somebody's name.
Why does TK? Yeah, why does TK not fire them? I've seen this, and
I have an answer to that, but go ahead.
Because it's a TV show. It's the same reason Vince never fired Stone Cold Steve Austin. But also, the Young Bucks are executives. Yeah. Also, he's already been. He's technically not part of the company right now in kayfabe. So how do you fire him? He wasn't even allowed in the building. So all that stuff. That's why he can't. And also, finally, even if I'm wrong about all that, it just happened. Like you wait till the next episode to find out Tony Khan's response. That's the whole point of what they're doing. But George, what was your reason? Did I already step on it?
No, you mentioned it because the Young Bucks are gonna just override or whatever it is, gonna hire him back. What I really want to see, first off, if Tony Khan is going to be on TV in any way for the NFL draft tomorrow, he better be in a neck brace.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to have the NFL article come up. But yeah, honestly, if I'm forced to say something or something about it, I'm going to say, like, I honestly really liked it. I think a little disagreement. I think TK was the least of the problem. I think he was just selling it as accordingly. You can even see him take the move because his back and his face was kind of in the position that he was in, and he just sold it at the end. I just feel like this to me is a big deal. And I think it could have been a bigger deal. I think it could have been the young Jack Perry coming out there and, cut the wrestling promo, coming out there and saying, you know what, you cost me 8 months of my career. Do you have any idea what it's like to sit at home for 8 months, coming out there and seeing everything around me in my personal life crumble, but also everything else? And not to necessarily mention, CM Punk, but just kind of saying like, and then I look over and he's an even bigger star. And here I am as the victim, playing the victim card, and I'm the one that being blamed for everything, but you know what? I'm back. Let bygones be bygones. Let's just, it is what it is. Let's just move it in the past, and then everything happening. I just feel like it could have been a bigger deal, and from what it was. And I am excited. I am going to tune in next week. Not that I wouldn't tune in anyways, but I am excited to see what's going to happen next week, because I do want to hear Jack Perry follow up on maybe hearing why he did everything that he did, kind of maybe going off of what I just said, telling him about, well, why wouldn't I beat up Tony Khan? You're the reason why I am in my position that I'm in right now. You did this to yourself. I didn't do this to you. You're the one who suspended me. I didn't suspend myself. You're the, it could kind of give that kind of heel mentality of, I mean, he's right, but he's also like a prick about it,
Right. A real quick question to both of you guys again. Now, next week when he comes out, he's affiliated with the Bucks and Okada. Does he stay dressed the same way he is because that's him, or do you see him wearing a suit?
I want him to stay the same.
I think he'd stay the same.
Yeah.
I think
just a curious question.
I mean, in fact, if anything, I hope he starts to rub them the wrong way. I hope he becomes like I'm not going to say he's Stone Cold. Don't pump the brakes. Everyone's going to hear me. That's what they're going to hear, even though I'm prefacing. I'm not saying the same thing. But I hope he gets that kind of vibe of don't trust anyone. I'm taking on the world. I'm in it for me. And you know what I mean? That same kind of mentality. Now, again,
and have the Bucks second guessing themselves for hiring him back.
Yes, and make him regret it. And so then he becomes the guy that, oh, you're a good guy, I'm going to knock your block off. Oh, you're a bad guy, I might knock your block off too. I don't care. I'm taking on everybody. Yeah. I think that would be the best thing for him personally. But I don't know if that's what I'll do. You got to tune in to find out. I'm excited. I think it's interesting. Like I said, I think if you hated him before this, you probably still hate him. If you love him before this, you probably still love him. But I got a feeling those cheers are going to be a lot louder than they ever would have been had he just left Jurassic Express. And you know what I mean? I think that we're buying in one way or the other. So,
and not drag this on any longer. At least he's eliciting an emotion from the crowd, and that's the main thing. Regardless of whether you cheer or boo, you're getting a reaction. That's what you want.
Yeah, it will be interesting to hear how they react outside of Daly's place, though. That'll be the very interesting one. But that wraps things up for us. Everyone in the chat, let us know what you thought. Let us know where you're going to leave your 5-star review and your likes, your comments, your shares, and subscribes. As we go around the horn, Jimmy Korderas, any final thoughts, and where can the world find you online?
There was some good and some bad. I thought they did an okay job following up a really good pay-per-view. They tried to fill up the gas tank, and the little clicker that stops when you get full wasn't working, so they overfilled the tank and it spilled out. That's all. Try to slow down, let things marinate, like we said, and take their time telling their stuff. But as far as where you can find me, here on Monday nights with Triple J, Wednesday nights with you guys usually, which is awesome. I have a great time doing that. You can catch the Roughing It Up podcast this week with my good. Oh, that's right. Brian Hebner lost a bet. So actually it's me and David LaGreca this week on the Roughing It Up podcast. He took over the chair, and we had a blast. It was a good one, and hope you guys check it out because it was fun. And,
if that's the case, we definitely have to check out this one.
Yeah, it was a blast. Dave's awesome, man. I love Dave. He's a good dude. He's got that passion too. It runs through his veins, and it shows. He wears it on his sleeve and on his pink robe. So that's awesome. Yep. And of course, my Ref and Rants, you can catch them on all of my social media platforms from Monday to Friday. Just little critiques here and there, not to tear down, to help, I hope, elevate, and maybe if I can help people learn a little bit. And of course, it's very late, so I'm just going to say, spend my days working hard on the go, but my hand on the mat is counting too slow. I can't wait to be alone with my baby tonight.
Take that, Deaf Rebel. Take Jim Johnson. George Hermoza, any final thoughts, and where can we find you?
I got 2 final thoughts, and it hit me, and I'll save it for next week. I had an epiphany over the weekend on why AEW, the fan base, is so passionate about their precious AEW. So I'll leave that open for next week. But yeah, I think my biggest criticism for AEW in general is everything that I mentioned, all my criticism for the most part about AEW Dynamite, I just wish it was bigger. Like they can make things so much more big of a deal than what we see, which makes bigger stars, bigger moments, hopefully more ratings and whatnot, right? Because that's what everybody always talks about, the ratings. I think with the ending angle, it's a step in the right direction. I'm really excited to see what they're going to have planned for Double or Nothing. So with that said, you can follow me on Twitter and all the social media, G Hermoza, GHERMOZA. You can follow my YouTube channel, The Wrestling Chatter, TW Chatter, on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube.
And you can find me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. You can also check me out on Peaches and Power Bombs with our very own Majestic Marie. That drops next week. Make sure to follow Majestic Marie at Queen of Mods so you can get all the details on when that is coming out and where you can find it. And of course, make sure to follow at Wrestling Inc. across all social media for all the latest wrestling news. And be sure to tune in on Friday for our After SmackDown show. You're not going to want to miss that one. It's a good one. And until then, I don't know. Have a good time. I'm just going to click this little button that says